HOA didn't know I was a water chemist. Now their hair's turning green. Part 1. The Mystery of the Green Hair. I knew something was wrong the second Karen stormed up to my house, clipboard in one hand, sunglasses perched like a crown, and hair so violently green, it looked like she dipped her head straight into a vat of radioactive goo. She wasn't alone. Trailing behind her, a wake of angry neighbors, muttering and tugging at their own hair. It all started, like most disasters in my neighborhood, on a Wednesday. Trash pickup, HOA inspections, and Karen's unsolicited patrols. Karen wasn't just another neighbor. She was the self-appointed president of our HOA, a woman who treated community aesthetics like a sacred religion and probably thought minding her own business was a mortal sin. That morning, coffee in hand, I was skimming leaves off my backyard pool when I spotted her marching down the sidewalk, like she was preparing to invade a small country. Without even a good morning, she barked, "That pool of yours, it's too blue. It's suspicious." I blinked at her. "Too blue? Seriously? I'll be sending you a compliance form this afternoon," she snapped, scribbling furiously on her clipboard. Typical Karen. She once fined a neighbor for having Halloween decorations up 2 days after Halloween, tried to ban barbecue grills because the smoke lingered aggressively. And now, she had chosen my pool as her next battleground. The thing is, she had no idea who she was dealing with. Because I'm not just a guy who likes a clean pool, I'm a certified water chemist, a decade of field work, a borderline obsession with chemical balance. My backyard wasn't just a pool, it was my masterpiece. I smiled politely at her, while revenge scenarios, bubbling like chlorine, brewed quietly in my mind. Part 2. Karen declares war. By the end of that week, an official-looking envelope landed in my mailbox, sealed with the proud insignia of the HOA inside, a demand for a full chemical breakdown of my pool water. Apparently, several concerned residents, translation, Karen and her coffee clatch, had filed complaints about chemical smells, unnatural sparkle, and one child swearing the water looked like it came from outer space. None of it verified, of course, but Karen didn't need facts. She had paranoia. Most people, when faced with HOA nonsense, have two choices: fold or fight. Me? I chose option 3, educate, creatively. I drafted a 10-page water chemistry report, chlorine levels, pH balance, Langmuir saturation index, even cyanuric acid ratios, meticulously logged, footnoted, graphed. It was so precise, so scientifically perfect. It could have been published in a peer-reviewed journal. Karen? She returned it, covered in red ink like a teacher grading a failing essay. Across the top, in giant angry letters, "Too technical. Simplify." Oh, Karen, you poor, sweet summer child. If she wanted simple, I'd give her simple. I started subtly. A touch of copper-based algicide, perfectly legal, totally harmless. Except if you add just the right amount, especially in water with slightly low calcium hardness, it triggers a delicious little side effect: green-tinted hair, especially noticeable in, you guessed it, bleached or color-treated hair, like Karen's entire HOA committee. The very next morning, after their group water aerobics session, they emerged from the community pool looking like they had bathed in a leprechaun's jacuzzi. Their hair shimmered under the sun. A vibrant, unmistakable seaweed green. I nearly dropped my coffee. There they were, crowding the clubhouse mirror, shrieking, pointing fingers, arguing like toddlers who'd all lost the same crayon. "20 minutes later, Karen pounded on my door. her hair still dripping, her eyes bulging with fury. "You sabotaged the pool!" she screeched. I sipped my coffee, glanced lazily past her at my crystal-clear water. "That's not my pool," I said, smiling. "I only take care of my own." Her face, it twisted like she was about to physically combust. Instead, she settled for scribbling a fresh fine on her clipboard, her hand trembling with rage. "We're launching a full investigation," she barked, stomping away, leaving wet green footprints across my porch. I closed the door behind her, grinning ear to ear, because what Karen didn't realize yet was that her little investigation was about to spiral wildly out of control. And me, I was just getting warmed up. Part 3. The Great Green Panic. Over the next few days, I became the prime suspect in a crime that didn't exist. Karen and her inner circle turned full-on paranoid, peeking over my fence, whispering behind oversized sunglasses, even attempting, very poorly, to sneak water samples from my pool, using a turkey baster. Yes, a turkey baster. I watched the entire thing unfold from my kitchen window, nearly crying from laughter. But the best part? They were wasting their time. Because my pool, it was perfect, crystal clear, chemically flawless. The green hair, that wasn't from my water. It was from theirs. Turns out, in a desperate attempt to fix things without admitting defeat, Karen had purchased cheap chlorine tablets, bulk-ordered knockoffs, loaded with copper sulfate. In trying to cover up her imaginary scandal, she had poisoned her own pool. Oh, the irony was so thick you could spread it on toast. One sunny morning, as I floated lazily in my pool, a book in one hand, a lemonade in the other, Karen stormed up again. This time, she brought backup, a grim-faced community board member, and a thermometer. No greeting, no pleasantries. "We're testing your pool for toxic levels," she declared. I smiled sweetly and gestured to my float companion, my neighbor's golden retriever, Max, who was happily paddling around, tongue lolling out, not a single green hair in sight. "You're welcome to try," I said, sipping my drink. The board member dipped a test strip into my pool, waited, and frowned. "This water's cleaner than my tap," he muttered. I beamed. "I am a water chemist after all," I said, with just the right amount of smugness. "Karen?" She turned redder than a fire truck. She didn't like being wrong. She hated it. But she also wasn't done, not by a long shot. I could have ended it there. Let her stew in her own embarrassment. Let the rumor mill do its job. But where's the fun in that? I had one final card to play. It was time to give the entire neighborhood a chemistry lesson they would never forget. And Karen? She wasn't ready. Not even close. Part 4. Karen's Chemical Conspiracy. Karen didn't sleep that night, I knew it, because at sunrise a fresh emergency flyer was stapled to every mailbox in the neighborhood. Across the top, in bold, panicked letters, "Urgent, pool hair epidemic, immediate action required." Beneath it, a wild list of accusations, claiming a mysterious chemical influence was causing widespread hair discoloration, demanding that every pool owner submit a full chemical report or face temporary pool closure. There was even a QR code linking to something she called the HOA Emergency Response Plan. It was glorious and absolutely insane. Naturally, I complied. I submitted another 10-page chemistry report, complete with CDC references, water safety guidelines, and just for fun, I snuck in a full paragraph written entirely in Latin, Karen returned it, furious, red penning, "Use English only," across the top. I framed it. It hangs proudly in my garage to this day. But Karen wasn't done. She started whisper campaigns, telling residents I was experimenting with dangerous chemicals, that I was recklessly endangering the community, that maybe, just maybe, I was leaking some kind of invisible chemical aura into the air itself. Yes, she said the words, chemical aura, out loud, at a public meeting. I nearly bit my tongue off trying not to laugh, but watching Karen unravel, that was just too satisfying to interrupt. So I leaned into it. Every time she walked past my house, I'd casually start up the pool pumps, sending a fine mist into the air. Nothing dangerous. Just a soft, chlorinated breeze, enough to make Karen recoil, shielding her hair like a vampire from holy water. One afternoon, I even set up a lawn chair by the fence, left a giant chemistry textbook wide open, and placed a coffee mug next to it that read, "World's #1 chemical menace." Karen saw it. She didn't smile. Not even a little. Meanwhile, the neighborhood panic was reaching a fever pitch. More people started noticing little green tints on their towels, their white shirts, even their eyebrows. Neighbors blamed everything. The landscaping company, the sprinkler system, aliens probably. Meanwhile, I sat in my crystal-clear pool, sipping lemonade, watching the chaos swirl, without lifting a finger, because the truth was, Karen was destroying herself, and I was just letting her. Part 5. The truth bubbles up. Karen wasn't going down without a fight. When the rumors didn't scare me, when the neighborhood didn't turn against me, she escalated. Again, she hired a private water consultant. I kid you not, a guy in a white lab coat showed up, carrying a metal briefcase, looking like he expected to find a toxic spill site. He knocked on my door, stone-faced, and said, "We're here to collect a sample." I handed him a beaker, freshly filtered, triple-tested, labeled neatly with a sticker that read, 100% HOA-compliant water. He didn't laugh. Figures. They ran their tests, they poked, they prodded, they scrutinized every drop like it held the secrets of the universe. And guess what? Chlorine, perfect. pH, perfect. Calcium hardness, perfect. Absolutely flawless. You'd think that would be the end, right? Oh no. Not with Karen. When the pool water turned up clean, she invented a new theory. Now, she insisted, it wasn't the pool water that was the problem. It was the air. Yes. Karen claimed my pool was emitting a chemical aura that somehow floated across the neighborhood, infiltrating showers, contaminating laundry, turning hair green through sheer airborne malevolence. She stood up during an HOA meeting, declared it with the conviction of someone revealing a government cover-up. I sat quietly in the back, choking on my laughter, as the room filled with awkward coughing and stifled chuckles. Karen wasn't just obsessed anymore. She was spiraling. See, Karen had built her entire reign of terror on one thing: fear. People feared the fines, the warnings, the pink clipboard patrols. But now, she was the punchline of every backyard barbecue, the cautionary tale whispered over lemonade glasses, and the more she grasped for control, the faster it slipped through her green-stained fingers. So naturally, I decided to push just a little bit further. Nothing harmful, nothing illegal, just enough to keep the story alive. Every time Karen walked past, the pool jets would mist gently into the breeze. I'd wave from my lawn chair, book in hand, coffee mug proudly displayed, world's #1 chemical menace. And Karen? She'd flinch, tug her wide-brimmed hat lower, and practically sprint back to her house. But even as I enjoyed the show, I knew something bigger was coming. Karen wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. She was gathering her forces, plotting something desperate. And when she finally made her move, well, let's just say, it was more spectacular than even I could have predicted. Part 6. Karen's Last Stand. It all came to a head at the most ridiculous spectacle my neighborhood had ever seen. Karen called an emergency HOA town hall meeting. Mandatory attendance. No exceptions. Flyers slapped onto every mailbox like we were being summoned to a military tribunal. The clubhouse was packed. Neighbors filled every chair. Some standing along the walls, others already rolling their eyes before Karen even opened her mouth. At the front, under a giant projector screen, Karen stood, gripping a microphone like it was a sword. Her hair, now hidden under an enormous hat, peeked out in awkward green-tinted strands. She clicked the first slide of her homemade presentation, a blurry photo of my pool jets. Zoomed in so far, it looked like a UFO sighting. In bold letters across the top, source of chemical contamination. I had to bite my cheek to keep from laughing. Karen clicked to the next slide. Photos of towels with green patches, kids with vaguely green hair highlights, one unsettling photo of a random bucket labeled hazardous runoff, which I knew belonged to the maintenance guy mopping locker rooms. But facts didn't matter here. Karen was on a mission. She launched into a wild speech, claiming airborne chemical drift, unknown environmental hazards, community-wide exposure events. Neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Some looked skeptical. Some whispered. Then Karen dropped the real bomb. "We believe a resident," she said, dramatically pausing, "has weaponized advanced chemical knowledge against our community." Her eyes locked onto mine across the room. It was so silent. You could hear the ceiling fan creak. I stood up, slowly, calmly. "Karen," I said, voice steady. "Simple question. Can you provide any documented test? Any single piece of verified evidence that links my pool to these supposed incidents?" She blinked. Her mouth opened, closed. "Well, no," she admitted. "But," she snapped, desperate, "you're a water chemist. You know too much. That makes you suspicious." A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. Even the treasurer chuckled into his hand. I smiled politely. "So, by that logic," I continued, "should we ban electricians from changing their own light bulbs? Or forbid chefs from cooking at home in case they season too aggressively?" More laughter. Karen's face flushed crimson. She fumbled through her papers, muttering about mocking the integrity of the HOA. But the damage was done. And then, the real hammer fell. Sandy, one of the board members, stood up. Quiet, unassuming Sandy, holding a plain manila folder. "I requested independent lab testing," she announced. "Samples from every pool, every hose, and every irrigation system in the neighborhood." The room leaned in. She opened the folder. "Out of 12 samples," she said slowly, "only one showed elevated copper levels." Karen stiffened. Sandy flipped the page. "The community pool," she said flatly, "traced back to a batch of budget chlorine tablets, purchased by Karen." You could actually feel the air leave the room. Karen's knees buckled slightly. She grabbed the podium for support. Someone coughed awkwardly. Another person outright laughed. And just like that, the myth of Karen, the mighty all-seeing president, shattered like a glass dropped on concrete. Neighbors started murmuring, glaring. Whispers turned into pointed questions. "Why did you ignore the first reports? Why blame others when you bought the chemicals? Who's paying for the hair treatments?" Karen tried to rally. She cried sabotage, fake science, even accused Big Chlorine of setting her up. Nobody cared. The tide had turned, and Karen, for the first time in a long, long time, was completely, utterly alone. Part 7. The Fall of Karen. The days that followed were pure, delicious chaos. The HOA board, under heavy pressure from angry residents, announced a formal vote. Should Karen remain as president? At first, Karen tried to fight. She went door to door, handing out homemade flyers, rambling about conspiracies, whispering that she'd been set up by saboteurs, and, I kid you not, warning of a secret cabal of chemical manipulators. It didn't work. The damage was done. Neighbors who once trembled at the sight of her clipboard now openly laughed as she passed. The night of the vote, the clubhouse was packed. Karen stood at the podium, delivering what she clearly thought was a stirring farewell address. She blamed betrayal, fake science, media sensationalism, and somehow, Big Chlorine. No one applauded. Someone coughed awkwardly. Another person checked their watch. And when the ballots were counted, Karen was officially voted out. Just like that. Her reign of clipboard terror was over. You'd think that would be the end. You'd think Karen would quietly slink back into obscurity. But no, Karen wasn't wired that way. She wasn't going to vanish. Not without one last, pathetic gasp for relevance. It started with her bizarre new campaign, Community Wellness Reboot. She printed out glossy pamphlets, stuffed them into every mailbox, offering free hair consultations, laundry detox sessions, and inviting neighbors to join her new organization, the Home Water Purity Alliance. There was even a newsletter, The Green Truth. It featured grainy, poorly photoshopped images of people clutching their green-tinted hair. Before and after shots that were clearly just different lighting. According to Karen, every garden hose, every backyard sprinkler, every kiddie pool was now a ticking chemical time bomb. The entire neighborhood rolled their eyes. Some started mocking her openly. One house put up a sign that read, "This lawn proudly approved by Karen's conspiracy hotline." Another neighbor dyed his golden retriever's tail green and started calling him the Chlorine Avenger. Laughter replaced fear. Mockery replaced panic. And Karen? She just kept spinning, digging herself deeper, still chasing shadows that only she could see. But even then, I knew. Karen wasn't finished. Not yet. The deeper she sank, the harder she would fight to claw her way back. And the showdown that was coming next? Oh, it would be her most desperate and hilarious attempt yet. Part 8. Science Strikes Back. Karen wasn't going to accept defeat quietly. That just wasn't in her DNA. One rainy afternoon. As I sipped tea by the window, I spotted a flash of yellow on my security cameras. There she was, Karen, pacing outside my gate in a bright yellow raincoat, phone flashlight on, pointing it dramatically at my pool jets, muttering to herself, as if she were gathering evidence of some invisible chemical fog. It would have been sad if it wasn't so hysterical. She circled for 20 minutes, trying and failing to capture proof of airborne contamination. Finally, soaked and frustrated, she stormed off into the drizzle, clutching her phone like it contained the secrets of Area 51. That's when the idea hit me. If Karen wanted a spectacle, I'd give her one. A real one. I announced a new event on the community board, Neighborhood Chemistry Day. No permits, no official HOA approval. Just an open invitation to come learn, snack, and watch a few safe scientific demonstrations. Flyers went out, bright, colorful, featuring a cartoon Atom mascot named Captain Compound. The tagline? "Let's get litmus!" Kids were buzzing with excitement. Parents smiled, grateful for something not involving HOA drama for once. Karen? Oh, she was furious, hovering at the edge of my property, muttering into her phone, probably filing an imaginary lawsuit. But she couldn't stop it. Not this time. The event was a hit. Over a dozen families showed up, kids in swimsuits, parents with lawn chairs and lemonade. I kicked things off with a few classics. Baking soda volcanoes, color-changing liquids using pH indicators, dry ice fog rolling across the pool. Every ooh and ah from the crowd made Karen's face, lurking across the street, grow tighter and tighter. She stood there, arms crossed, phone camera rolling, looking like she might combust at any moment. And then, it was time for the finale. I poured a small amount of perfectly safe reactive compound into a kiddie pool set up for the demonstration. The water swirled from clear to a vibrant, unnatural green, right before everyone's eyes. The kids gasped. The parents laughed. Someone clapped. From across the street, Karen's mouth fell open. She fumbled her phone, muttering something about illegal discharge and mass hysteria, then turned and stomped away, shoes squelching in the wet grass. Later that evening, a formal complaint landed in my inbox. It accused me of public demonstration of chemical trickery, reckless water display with potential for community panic. No signature, but titled, beautifully, Karen's Community Concern. I laughed so hard, I nearly fell off my couch. At the next HOA meeting, now under the new, much calmer leadership of President Greg, Karen tried, one last time, to rally the troops. She ranted about chemical warfare, copper sulfate conspiracies, psychological water terror. Greg politely cut her off after exactly 3 minutes. Nobody took her seriously anymore. The room moved on to the next agenda item without missing a beat, voting on new park bench colors. Karen was officially background noise. Part 9, the water finally clears. The weeks that followed felt almost surreal. Without Karen's chaos, the neighborhood finally started to breathe again. HOA meetings went back to their original purpose, bickering about fence colors, potluck planning, arguing over whether the new park benches should be wood or composite. No more chemical witch hunts. No more emergency flyers about invisible mist. Karen still showed up, always sitting in the back row, scribbling furiously into a battered notebook like she was preparing a court case that would never happen. But her voice, that once commanded fear, was now just background noise. The community changed, too. People started hanging wind chimes again. Someone painted their mailbox neon pink for a birthday and left it that way for weeks without a single complaint. Teenagers splashed around after dark, doing cannonballs into pools, laughing without fear of Karen's night vision phone lens peeking from behind a shrub. It wasn't anarchy. It was just freedom. Freedom to be imperfect. Freedom to be human. And my pool? Oh, my pool became something of a legend. The pool that made Karen green. Turned into a running joke at block parties and barbecues. Parents would tease their kids, "Careful near that water. You'll come out looking like the Hulk." Neighbors dropped by just to ask what secret formula I used. I always smiled and said, "Just science and a little patience." What I didn't say was that part of me missed the game. Without Karen pushing and prodding, There was no challenge left, no chaos to outmaneuver, no chemical puzzles to solve with a smirk. The war was over, and I had won. Or so I thought. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky blushed pink, there was a knock at my door. When I opened it, it was Karen, not the clipboard-wielding tyrant, not the shrieking conspiracy theorist, just Karen, jeans, plain hoodie, no makeup, no camera, no scribbling notes, just a woman, looking very, very small. She stared at the ground, voice barely above a whisper. "I need to ask you something," she said. I stepped aside. She walked in like she expected the walls to reject her, perched awkwardly on the edge of the couch. Clutching the glass of water I handed her like it might explode. For a long time, she didn't speak. Then finally, "I know I went too far," she said. "I made it personal. I lost control." I said nothing. Because, what could I say? Everyone already knew. She swallowed hard. "My niece," she said, voice cracking slightly. "She's having skin reactions after swimming. Rashes. Burning eyes." I tested the water, Karen continued, desperate. "The pH is fine. Chlorine's normal. But something's wrong." She looked up at me, pleading. "You know how to fix it, don't you?" There was no swagger now. No accusations. Just a scared ant. I could have kicked her out, could have reveled in her downfall, but science doesn't pick sides, and neither did I. I grabbed my test kit and followed her out the door. At her niece's house, the pool looked clean, but the smell, sharp, metallic, wrong. Tests confirmed it. Chlorine sky high, pH bouncing all over. Stabilizer levels through the roof. Cheap chemicals. Again. I traced it back to overuse of off-brand chlorine tablets. The same garbage Karen had once dumped into the community pool months ago. Karen stared at the numbers. Crushing realization washing over her. "It was my fault, wasn't it?" she whispered. I nodded. "You tried to control something you didn't understand," I said quietly. "And that's always dangerous." She closed her eyes, nodded slowly. We drained the pool together, rebalanced it properly, walked through every step the right way, this time. By sunset, her niece was splashing happily again, giggling under a golden sky. Karen stood off to the side, watching silently. For the first time, I saw her smile. A real one. Not smug. Not forced. Just human. As I packed up my gear, she walked me to the gate. "You should run for HOA president," she said, half smiling. I nearly laughed out loud. "That's not really my thing," I said. "You'd be good at it," she said softly. "You understand people better than I ever did." I didn't reply, just gave a small nod, and walked away. Karen didn't disappear after that. She didn't vanish into exile. But she changed. Her grip on the neighborhood loosened. Her clipboard collected dust. She became just another face at community events. Another neighbor with opinions. But no authority to enforce them. And somehow, that was enough. Not friends, but not enemies either. Just a quiet truce. Sometimes, when I float in my pool at night, staring up at the stars, I think about everything that little patch of water caused. The battles, the laughter, the chaos, the science experiments gone gloriously wrong, and how in the end, It wasn't revenge that fixed things. It was understanding, a little knowledge, a little patience, and a lot of very green hair.